All right, we're live. Awesome. Well, what a day. We set this up as a 2-day event. Technically, they're half days. It feels like we packed 3 days into one day already. Um, Lots of awesome sessions. There's been very tactical deep dives on topics like co-sell and marketplace and how to leverage data, how to run a PLG motion leveraging marketplace, creating dashboards and reports to track against certain KPIs, and many other topics that were covered around how to build a successful cloud go-to-market business. Um, so I don't have kids, so I have not learned the skill of not picking a favorite. I still very much pick favorites in just about everything that I do. My favorite session so far, not including this session here today, has been the session around the Erin Feiger, who is our VP of co-sell at Tackle. She led that with folks from VMware, HashiCorp, and Commvault, really doing a deep dive on co-sell. There was a ton of great tactical and strategic nuggets on how to build a successful co-sell business. And as part of that conversation, there was a lot that got intertwined around marketplace and marketplace strategy and how to leverage marketplace. And so it has really been the theme of the day, is how these two are so tightly coupled together. And so we're going to continue with that theme and really talk about how co-sell and marketplace work together to build a successful cloud go-to-market business in a down economy. And so I'm joined by two very special guests and friends, Jessica Alexander from CrowdStrike and Javier Molina, who is CRO at Starburst, where we're going to spend the next 45 minutes discussing these topics. So I have some questions. Your questions are much better than mine. Please load up the chat. We have some folks in there. We'll answer as we go along. We'll try to get to all of them. And with that, maybe we'll start with Jessica and just share a bit about your company's cloud go-to-market journey at CrowdStrike, and what your role has really been in building out this channel.
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy. And it's nice to see you, Javier. Nice to be here with you today. Going on 7 years of being on the journey, we started very early with a basic listing on Marketplace and just tried a lot of different things. Fast forward to where we are today, the business has been mainstreamed into our alliances organization, and it's just a core part of the DNA of, our go-to-market, right, from a partner perspective. So, kind of reflecting back on the journey, I think a lot of evolution and maturity has happened in the market, and like to talk a little bit about that today and kind of our experience there, but primarily really being focused on, because of that maturity and evolution, like you said, co-sell and marketplace are very much interconnected. And kind of the third pillar too is really that integration, right, with the cloud service providers that we sometimes overlook, that make a customer's experience who happens to be buying a cloud service for part of their infrastructure, to pair on an ISV service that's really nicely integrated into the cloud fabric. So that's kind of our lens. Like I said, it's become a mainstream go-to-market for us. And a lot of the ISVs that I talk to as an advisory board member on behalf of Tackle, they're figuring out, how do we implement it, right? Because I think now the co-sell and marketplace and service integration, like that's gotten to a point of really enabling ISVs to be intentional and strategic and more outcome oriented in like, what outcomes do we want? And pointing the GTM and designing the GTM around those outcomes. So I'll just pause there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And maybe Javi, share a little bit about, your entry point to the journey at Starburst, that started a year and a half ago.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for having me. And Jessica, great to meet you and have you as well. From my perspective, when I joined the company, we were sub $20 million in revenue, and really looking for ways to go faster and go further. And the marketplace, especially given the types of customers that we work with and their habits around, how they procure software, it was vital for us to be able to have a marketplace strategy. And so for us, really, not only in setting up the marketplace, but also thinking about how do we start to embed it into our sales strategy, into our sales motion. And this goes from everything from adoption to providing the appropriate resources, and to reiterating it, reiterating the marketplace benefits to the sales organization. So really for us, the early part of the journey was, how do we start to use the marketplace to meet customers where they are, and how they're used to procuring software, and then also driving adoption with the field, because ultimately, they're the tip of the spear, and discussing procurement vehicles and funding models with our customers. All in all, I would say, from how we've grown revenue, and how we've gotten to the point that we're at today, marketplace has been essential to that, and essentially accelerating our deal cycles.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both for sharing. And it's always cool to see like the different points of the journey. Like you two are, entered at very different spots. Jess from day one, 7 years ago, like trying to figure this out. Like, what is this new thing, and how do we go build this out? To Javi, when you joined, was a tackle customer, like had some marketplace business happening, kind of just, really getting co-sell, that motion really going, and how it, entry point at that point, and then continuing to scale it out. And maybe if each of you could share a little bit about how you develop those relationships with the cloud providers, and just what are some of those foundational elements to build momentum off of?
Yeah, happy to. I think for us, it kind of comes in three parts. For us, there's the co-sell marketplace, which is allowing us to, again, be a procurement vehicle for our customers, and allow customers to essentially procure that the way that they're used to. Secondly, we think about, how Tackle has really helped us is around product integration. So given our technical nature of our product, and the technology that's required to get our customers off the ground, they're looking for things like Kubernetes integrations and those sort of things. So for our PDMs, really getting customers to think about, how do we develop relationships that combine the two products together. And so for us, that was essential. And then third, what are ways for us, for our co-sell, to really start to drive executive relationships? I think, thinking beyond just the partners and the relationships that we have, but thinking broad and wide across the marketplace partners that we have, to really unlock, various initiatives, relationships, go-to-market programs that we can align around. And so for us, we've looked to take it to a new level. I would say that our alliances team really focuses on, getting high and wide, not just with our customers, but really with our marketplace partners, so that we can, really drive effective co-sell and marketplace.
Jess, you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to kind of ISV's where they are in the journey of adopting this go-to-market. From a maturity standpoint, I'm going to kind of go back to the idea of service integrations that really make a cloud customer happy. The better together story of, if they're down, if they're using a cloud service and there's a complementary offering from CrowdStrike that makes the service more secure, easier to be secure, reduces risk, right? Really aligning to those objectives. And I kind of call it the cloud wrapper, right? It's taking a product that we have and kind of sending it through a cloud wrapper, which is to make sure that it's well integrated into marketplace, that it is leveraging the programs and even the language and wording that a cloud, persona would be comfortable with, and obviously, being deployed in a way that aligns with a co-sell and the cloud sellers in the field. So I think with the patterns that we've seen, whether it be AWS, GCP, Azure, Oracle's coming online, Red Hat, right? There's a lot of these cloud marketplaces that give ISV selection to say, where should we invest our time, our energy, our co-sell, right? There's just a lot of options out there. So, where 7 years ago we were more experimenting to say, what can this actually do for our business, right? It was sort of more experimental, and we really leveraged programs that were available, right? Oh, that sounds like a great idea, like enterprise contract, or let's see how that impacts the business. Whereas, fast forward to now, ISVs have an opportunity to say, well, where am I in my journey? Just, my pre-IPO, am I Series A, am I stealth, am I, kind of public already, kind of launched in market, and decide, well, do I want accelerated transaction speed? Do I want to reach new buying personas? Do I want to reduce the cost of acquiring a new customer, right? It's like, and then we have all these options as far as like which cloud service providers to go to market with. So I just think it's become a very rich ecosystem of opportunity, and really, the opportunity for, Tackle to help ISVs to say, here's what we see from the whole market perspective. And based on where you are in your journey, your business model, your outcomes, here's what we would prescribe as a great co-selling opportunity with X, Y, or Z cloud service provider. So I think it's an exciting time, especially, given the market conditions for software companies. I think we all used to, money was sort of being thrown at software companies to go grow and build and experiment. And now it's a time of intention, and to say, we have a certain amount of investment, and how are we going to use it to get the most out of it? And I just think it's a great environment to test out delivering outcomes through the cloud service provider go-to-markets.
Awesome. Well, for Jessica, you've been somebody from day one of when I joined Tackle a year and a half ago, that like the wrapper, that was the first time I heard it was from you a year and a half ago. I use that all the time when talking to our customers. And you hit on a good point, that is, this has evolved quite a bit, like look at the past couple of years. Even look at last year at our Cloud Go-to-Market XP event, like we weren't talking a ton about co-sell and data and the reports and analytics. And that's something I've always heard you hit on, like metric everything, like track it, like have a program around it, and test it. Like, what are some of the other things that, each of you have done that you think that you've done especially well and really getting full adoption of this journey?
I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, I would say that really for us at the time, it was about enablement and scale, and teaching or enabling our sellers how to align with with AWS or GCP, or even a cloud persona, right? We're traditionally selling to the CISO, the SOC director. And, our goal was to capture new buying personas with the cloud service providers, who are primarily DevOps, right? They're oriented around developing software and not necessarily security. So we really measured what was our adoption from a seller perspective. How many, new sellers were we onboarding every week that were doing a transaction through the marketplaces? And then we could tell by region, well, we've got great adoption in the Americas, and EMEA and APAC, we need to invest there. We need to spend some time. And then we could also call on our friends at the cloud service provider and say, hey, can you help us spin up APJ? We think there's a lot of opportunity there. What are you seeing, from the other ISVs that you're working with? So it gave us kind of metrics around where did we need to invest. And on kind of the flip side of, where were we seeing adoption with the cloud service provider, and being very intentional about where were we launching deals, what regions were they in, where were we seeing the fastest growth rates? Was it greenfield? Was it enterprise? And really mapping to the cloud service provider sales teams and measuring where we were getting adoption and enablement there as well. So that served us well in being able to respond quickly to investment asks, because I think one of the most difficult pieces of the GTM to plan for is what, how, and where to invest in headcount. And again, it kind of ties back to the benefit of Tackle. I think you guys have a great agility in that area to be able to say, we've got the operational piece, so you can go invest in specific go-to-market skill set, right? Or we've got the go-to-market, you can invest your resources here. So Again, I think that's a conversation that is a great one to have as an ISV, is like, where are we seeing adoption and where do we need to invest resources?
Love that. Love that. Javi, anything to add there?
Yeah, definitely. I think, just for some context, I mean, being on the revenue side, my team span everything from, pre-sales, solutions architects, sellers, obviously, sales readiness, and then post-sale customer support, technical account managers, the folks that are delivering the professional services. And so, we talk a lot about modern go-to-market here at Starburst. And really what I mean by that is, if you think about the evolution of selling software and really kind of just the rapid disruption that the cloud providers have put on to the ISV landscape over the last 10 years, for decades, people have been selling software for a very long time, and really there's been some sales methodologies and things that have been created that are still prevalent today, things like MedPick and Command of the Message and Challenger Sell and others. And then you think about the way that people are, discovering, testing, acquiring software today, that really kind of, again, like, the likes of the cloud providers and AWS as such have really kind of disrupted. People can just try and buy software. And so really, when you think about combining those two, enterprise sales methodologies along with more modern SaaS practices, then you start talking about a modern go-to-market. And in that, like, really what it's about is lowering friction for your customers, right? And how do you use Marketplace for that? And we view Tackle, for us at least, as, it's obviously the automation of Marketplace. It's assisting us with co-sell, and it's really an extension of our team. For us, as trying to be as efficient as possible at our size, Tackle really has become an extension of our organization. And so, thinking about how we embed this motion into our sales organization, similar to what Jessica said, it's really about creating a culture around it and embedding it into the business. So, as we all know, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't get discussed, or it's not top of mind. And so we put it into our new hire training. We have something called advanced sales training, which happens 90 to 120 days after someone's hired. We tend to use all hands calls where we're highlighting deals. A lot of times, you have an account executive that's talking about how great the sales campaign was. We try to bring in other elements, like, how did the SDR create the opportunity? What role did the solutions architect play, and others in the ecosystem? And that includes our alliances and partner team talking about how the partner ecosystem and the transaction through Marketplace really accelerated a deal or helped us get funding in the right places. So, again, kind of combining the two motions towards a modern go-to-market, I think Marketplace is an essential asset to that motion.
Man, it like brings a tear to my eye. Like as a revenue leader, just hearing like the excitement and like how it's embedded from day one as a new rep. And you've hired a lot of new reps, since you've joined, you've doubled the organization. And so to like see it just be fully integrated from initial onboarding into ongoing enablement and even into the post sale is pretty awesome. What anything else to share around the sales enablement piece from either of you? Because we have just at Tackle, we found that is such a usually in the what differentiates somebody from being successful and not is the sales team on board. Like, does the sales team view this as something that's actually going to help them get deals done faster, generate more pipeline, get access to budget, versus organizations where that enablement just isn't fully bought on? It's like, I don't want to be the first person to try this. Like, somebody just tried to do a private offer and it slowed it down. We didn't know how to get the private offer out. Like, sales ops, messed it up. So is there any other like tips or advice that you can share on really how to get, this off the ground and how to get the sales team really on board?
Well, I'm going to crosstalk a bit and just say, CROs like Javier, right, who are using modern go-to-markets. That's really where the rubber meets the road. So, Javier.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I think we talked about a little bit in that last piece there, but I think it is just continually figuring out ways to keep it top of mind and almost doing kind of internal selling. Like, there's multiple things that are critical to a business, whether they be professional services, selling training, using some new system that you put in place to get people. Like Tackle.io kind of falls into that bucket of, how do we not only, it's not a one and done thing. How do we use wins and learn inefficiencies in systems and processes to make sure people understand the benefits of it? So it's not, sellers are very, how does it help me, be successful? How does it help my customers be successful? How does it help me win deals? How does it help me get to my number? That's really what the mindset is oriented around. And so thinking in that lens of, how does marketplace and co-selling really, drive that motion for them is critical. So again, everything from highlighting deals to, making sure that you're revisiting it quarterly with the field sales team around how it's starting to get bigger and better within the business.
Awesome. I love it. Modern go-to-market, like I'm stealing that. So thank you. Maybe shifting gears a bit. So like we've talked a lot about, some of the benefits and how sellers can really leverage this. Like what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had, and you've kind of some of the roadblocks or, hurdles that you've had to get over in really building out this channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of falls into the modern go-to-market bucket. It's like it's the modernization of enterprise selling. If you think about, if I have a seller that has been selling, enterprise software for 20 plus years, you're talking late 90s, early 2000s, and the transaction vehicles and the way that technology was sold. If you think about it, internet was kind of in its early days. Salespeople were the conduit of information to a customer. So a lot of times you were doing a lot of education enablement for a customer to get to understand what you're doing. And where nowadays, customers are coming to us, everything from a PLG motion where they already have access to the product and using it by the time sales gets involved, to, customers educating themselves through documentation and videos and webinars. 60 to 75% of the sales cycle is already done by the time they get to us. And so again, if you match that with enterprise selling as it's always been done, there's kind of a clash of two cultures there. And so really like a challenge for us is really like, how do you get the whole go-to-market team to really start to think differently about that? And it's not just marketplace, right? It's using, MedPick, but in a more, modern way, because again, customers have pain, and that's how they found you. Thinking about a product or user first mindset, like, again, that's super important for us to think about, how do we get somebody onboarded to the product, using it and successful, while also doing discovery at the same time, where previously it was kind of done sequentially. And then, things like, how we outbound, doing it more data driven and intelligently, using signals and things like of all the tooling that we have today. So I would just say, in that whole context of modern go-to-market, the modernization of selling is probably also still one of our biggest challenge, because, when you talk about, commit to consume models or pay-go models through the marketplace, that's not something that's traditionally thought of when you're dealing with an enterprise customer. It used to be like, how can I maximize the front end sale and land, where nowadays it's like, let's try to land the customer, use the technology, get their consumption to grow, get them to see value in the product, and then thinking about a transaction vehicle. And again, that I think there's a learning process that we're going through. We're in the middle of it right now.
Awesome. And I would just add to Javier's comments that, it's really modernizing, and it's, is it a retrofit? Is it a get to start from, scratch, right? I think the challenges for the larger ISVs we see are, how do I retrofit my go-to-market to accommodate this new opportunity? Right. And it's, there are varying levels of proficiency in enabling channel partners or distributors or, other more kind of old school software distribution mechanisms, right? How do we retrofit those to accommodate a new path to market? So I think that's the challenge, and kind of what is the opportunity ahead versus kind of if we keep doing what we're doing, right? That kind of discovery opportunity as well. But it's really a conversation of where are customers, right? Where are they buying? And as Javier said, like it's an evolution for the customer too, because now they can try things out in a little bit and then see if they want to use more of them. And, you know, obviously a lot of software companies aren't sort of built on that revenue motion. So it's definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just trying to follow along on some of the questions. There's maybe a question for you, Javi. Just tips for gaining traction and buy-in with the cloud partners as a smaller ISV without a big brand name.
Yeah, I think you have to first understand what is the value that you provide. The cloud provider. I think the same thing it goes for really any partner strategy of the value that you provide them, and I think a lot of times where sometimes ISVs or vendors go wrong is they approach a potential partner or technology partner thinking about how it helps them rather than putting that in reverse and thinking what is the benefit that I would provide them really succinctly, and how can I go and approach them to help them with our business ultimately. But yeah, thinking in reverse there, I think is my big tip.
Great. So this is a fun one. So Jim asked about comp models and like modernizing comp models, and just knowing the history you and I have, like you're somebody I call, like if I'm thinking about a new pricing model for us to tackle or comp, like you're one of the first people I call, just because you've always been so forward thinking on this. Like, how do you go about thinking about that in marketplace deals and comp structure for your reps?
Yeah, I think it's so just for context, like, my previous company, we were one of the first open source organizations to go public with a SaaS product, and Starburst is very similar. And so I think, I spent a lot of time trial and error trying to figure out, what is the right comp model for an organization. I think your comp structure certainly has to match like the motion and the incentives that you want to drive. For us, and the way that I typically build comp models is I don't start with the plan itself. I start with the behaviors that I want to drive. And so we'll sit down with the RevOps team, with the finance team, with a big whiteboard in front, and just say, okay, just no boxes. Let's like just write down, what do we want to drive, right? We want to drive new logos, but we also want to, incentivize quality new logos. We want, to incentivize selling training and services. We want to XYZ. And so off of that, when you start to, architect your comp plans, then you start to put it all in the reference of the behaviors that you want to drive. And I think that, through really, it's not as much I would say the biggest stressor on comp models today, and really all tooling, to be honest with you, is the consumption model, right? Like PLG is one thing, but behind PLG products is typically the consumption model. And so everything from like how you forecast consumption at scale, how you your back-end operations teams with finance, accounts receivable and such, in addition to the comp plans, all like start to put, stress on that. Because again, if you start to do a commit to consume deal, for example, where a customer commits to $100,000, but then you invoice them, monthly, or you invoice them in arrears based on how they consume, you're then paying out commissions ahead of when you receive revenue. And so I think it's all of those sort of nuances to consider when you're starting to think about, building a modern go-to-market and cloud-first business.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe Jess, anything to add on that? Like, as you were kind of thinking back to the early days of building out this motion and getting reps on board, and just tips on really how to design and incentivize marketplace deals.
Yeah, I mean, really, I would second what Javier said about designing outcomes, right? And really identifying where you are in your journey. If it's, speed, customer acquisition costs, right? Kind of what are our bigger outcomes that we want, and then designing the comp plans so that, they're not a penalty, it's more of an incentive, and, the carrot and the stick kind of approach of, what behaviors do we want to encourage? So.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a couple of comments that are kind of sprinkled in here just around getting full executive sponsorship, of co-sell and marketplace, and maybe share a little bit of like how you've done that. Like, Jess, like how'd you get George to just even pay attention to this and like get this to a point where he's talking about it publicly?
Well, CrowdStrike is always, an innovator, disruptor, really wants to try new things and is primarily about speed. So, the idea that we could align in the field and capture new buying personas faster and, just transact quickly. And that was a big game changer for him. And, the opportunity to have access to EDPs and this path to budget that, cloud customers have already in their, and, already in the bucket, if you will. So, an opportunity to dial into that as well is important. So again, it was back 7 years ago. It was like this brand new shiny thing that was really a cool idea. So again, it was more about speed and access to a new budget and new personas.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Javi, like same question, just around like how you got the executive team just across the board from finance and marketing and your CEO to really get on board and adopt this.
Yeah, I think, I can't take credit for that, to be honest with you. I think, the way that it's been told to me, at least, I was the beneficiary of it coming in, but the advice was given to Justin Borgman, our CEO, to really focus and think about, partners and alliances and marketplace first, as we're starting to think about the go-to-market. And I think a lot of times people think about that in reverse, and it's really kind of been an accelerant for us. So, Justin went out and hired Tony Adams, who reports to him directly. And, for us, like Tony and I partner a lot on, how do we start to think about embedding the partner activities, not just in our go-to-market, but also in our product and technology offerings together to help accelerate our business. And I would say that they've done a tremendous job there. So, exec buy-in was first and foremost with this business, and then hiring around that and then putting it into our strategy.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And in a few of the sessions earlier today, there was a lot of discussion around that. And like, even when you're thinking about developing a new offering, it's like, okay, we have this new offering we're going to come out with. Let's think cloud first. Let's think, how does this tie in? How are we going to go train, the cloud providers on what this new offering is? Let's make sure we got the message right and it's aligned. It's not just like, hey, this is our message and we think you should say this. And they're like, nah, we got our own product over here. I'm already doing this thing. So love hearing that cloud first approach. Yeah, like maybe just, I know we got a few minutes here. Any final just tips, like just anything in building a cloud go-to-market motion, just like, what would you say just are the most important things and additional things you'd want to share?
Well, I think from my perspective, really starting with the outcomes. I think that's setting intentionally, again, at an executive level, from the CFO to the CEO to the CMO, like Javier said. I mean, it's just part of the executive strategy around the product and how to go to market. Like it's where you start from. This is the outcome we want, and how can we leverage a cloud service provider go to market to get there? So whereas 7 years ago, it was more about, what is this thing? Is it viable? Is it a flywheel we can actually align to and get benefit from? And, we were really iterating alongside the cloud service providers and building out these programs. And now it's more of there's a broad selection of opportunities, like I said earlier, with all the different cloud service providers, and really being intentional about which ones and why and how. So Javier, your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I think I plus one to everything that you said there. I think my advice to anybody out there, really, especially today in today's age, and I talk to my sales team about this a lot, which is we're not selling software, we're helping buyers buy software. And I think that's a really important delineation, because when we think about how we educate and enable our customers to understand not only our technology, but the value of our technology, and competitors and everything around us. You're helping them make a buyer's decision, and I think, like, if we think about it in our everyday world, when we go to the store to go purchase something, like, we already have an intention in mind. We just need someone to help us navigate the options, the pros and cons, and I think it's very similar, human behavior when it comes to software around, most times when whether it's a DevOps or a developer friendly technology, or on our side, a data engineer and architect persona, they're really trying to understand more. And so how do we help them buy our technology from the beginning of the sale and how we do discovery all the way through the end of funding models and transaction vehicles through the marketplace.
I love that. Yeah, we have a similar, philosophy here at Tackle as well. As we're really revenue consultants, and we're trying to help you generate more revenue and faster. And so, and it's kind of like, to your point, it's from day one up until they're doing a webinar like this, talking about the company. And so it's all those different touch points, and then how it intertwines in there. So I know we got a few minutes. If there's any final questions, I'd love to have everybody throw a few questions in there. I do want to call out a few people within each of your organizations that have also just been instrumental in the partnership. And these are people that lean in, and I think we talk to them. Somebody at Tackle talks to each of these people almost every day, and it's just a testament to it takes a village. Things are changing all the time. But Boone at Starburst and Lindsay Bregman at CrowdStrike are just two just incredible resources that get it. They have the trust throughout the organization, and they really lean in and drive this. So I think it's one thing that was kind of intertwined in the conversation here, but it is critical that you have that person, that's also helping drive this and owns this and just goes and gets it done. So I wanted to take a few minutes while we had a little bit of time to just give those two a shout out. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. I know, Jess, you're a little bit more removed, from that side of the business now, but if there's anything else or any other resources internally that are critical to a successful cloud go-to-market business that we haven't talked about.
I appreciate you calling out Boone, and he's a tremendous asset for us. When we think about the adoption, it's people, process, technology. That we talked a lot about the process of embedding this motion. I think the people are really important. We talked about Tony Adams and Boone and Harrison Johnson for us are really important. The technology is Tackle, right? So once those three things get intertwined and put together, it's really impactful for us.
And I'll just second that Lindsay is an expert, right? And going back to Javier's modern go-to-market, having resources that just speak cloud, they know what to do. They know whether it's integrating with the ACE portal, whether it's knowing AO versus, just all the nomenclature, as well as really understanding. And this was something that we focused on very much so at the beginning, was how do we, if there is a manual process, how do we automate it, right? And I think that's the cool thing about a cloud service provider go-to-market, especially with the connections and whether it's an ACE portal or the marketplace, right? How do we engineer all the friction out of that? Maybe it starts out as a human process, but then in order to scale it, really engineering the friction out of it. So, having experts like Lindsay on board to take that and say, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to diagram it out, and we're going to automate it, right? That's really the evolution and the scale that an ISV can get from this type of program.
Yeah, I love it. It's awesome. And thank you for sharing that. I saw Aaron put a comment, there's kind of an addition is the data, which is something, we've been really big on here at Tackle. It's been in a few of the sessions today, and is really, just making sure we're leveraging data as the starting point of where would this, customer prefer to buy? And if they would prefer to buy through AWS and we have data that informs us of that, it's like, okay, great. That's a great way to inform the motion of, let me kick off that co-sell motion. Let me go work with that cloud provider to go help support me and getting this to the point where I can now go do a marketplace deal. So I know data is a part of all of our lives, and again, subtle plug for Tackle. We're here to help and support, and an additional data point to help drive that motion. Perfect. I know we're wrapping up on time here. I want to thank you both very much for continuing to be just awesome partners, taking time to share your knowledge with us. I don't think there's any other questions. So, any final words?
Thank you for having us, Javier. It was great to meet you and appreciate it.
You as well. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks,
Good
Jeremy.
to see you.
Awesome.
Good to see you.
Thank you both, and thank you all. I know Nicole will do a bit of a closeout here in a moment, so stick around. Thanks all.
I guess we're free to go.